Hello, I'm Dr. Basil Considine. I'm here from the ACU Online Writing Center, and today we are going to be talking about graduate writing and APA style. Now, this is a webinar in a larger series in which we're going to introduce you to some core principles that will be helpful throughout your tenure at ACU and to a set of some of the most commonly used formatting and style rules in APA 7. We have many other webinars about graduate writing, and we have many other webinars about APA style, including different tasks that will come up as you progress through your particular program. And throughout this, I would encourage you to ask questions. You can always ask questions in a webinar like this, in a discussion board with your faculty and your classmates, in an email to the Online Writing Center. In fact, if you just send an email to onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu, you can contact us any day of the week, and we have a team that will respond to your emails, usually within the same day. We also have appointments where you can get feedback on your writing center related work. So if you have a discussion board post, a job resume, a letter of application for something, a paper, a problem statement, anything that's written that you'd like to bring in, you can make an appointment with the Writing Center. We have even people who have brought in slide decks for a job interview presentation that they're doing that they wanted to get someone else's feedback on it. Any writing, anytime, any stage, we're happy to help. Now, there's no charge for the Writing Center appointments, and we'll show some of the systems in a little bit. But first of all, let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I am teaching this webinar. I first joined ACU back in November of 2018 to help on setting up a number of support services for the graduate programs. And then I joined the Writing Center's core team. I spent a time as the interim director, and I am the head of doctoral writing. A lot of my day is spent helping students such as yourself adapt to understand and work towards the requirements for your degree. And that includes learning how to apply the expertise that you have in other areas in the particular form and presentation that is expected of you in your graduate program. Now, there are a couple commonalities there that may be different from other studies that you've done before this point. One of the reasons why almost every online program at ACU, and that's basically everything except for the programs at the Graduate School of Theology, which, as they say, answers to God, almost all of the other programs will be using APA 7th edition right now. Now, APA 7th edition is a style system developed by the American Psychological Association. And the American Psychological Association, or APA, developed this system so that it would be easy to look at a text and know, where did this information come from? How recent is it? Is this something where you are repeating something that someone else has said, or adding in your own meaning or findings? And it also tries to be unambiguous, meaning that you can look at it and know exactly what it means without having to bring in additional knowledge. Now, that is a significant task. And because of this, there are some particular ways about it that you might feel are more strict than some other style systems that you may have worked with. So, for example, if you've done humanities writing, often you're using a lot of synonyms to describe the same thing to try and get at some of the less tangible or harder to describe aspects of it, especially subjective experience. Whereas in APA style, we try and emphasize using the same words to refer to the same thing, so we know it's that exact same thing and not something that might be similar, but not the same in important ways. Here's an example. If we're referring to a car, and the important detail is that it has 4 wheels and it can get you places, great. If you say car, then that will help someone show up with the thing you need, 4 wheels to get you places. Now, if you have a coupe that only has 2 seats in it, and the person is expecting that the car will have 4 or 5 seats, minimum, then you might have a problem, especially if you go grocery shopping or you're trying to pick up a bunch of friends. Similarly, if you need a truck or a van and you use car or coupe or sedan, you might not end up with the thing that you want. So to avoid confusion like this, APA style specifies that you use consistent terminology and highly specific terminology to refer to the same thing. That doesn't mean that it has to be a very complicated word, but it does mean that it should be clear that you are referring to that thing that you mentioned, and that if someone were to look it up in a dictionary, that it would be clear what you're talking about. Or if it's not one of those things, that you will explain how you are using it. All right, with that little introduction, let's move on to the next part and talk a little bit about the Online Writing Center. Now, there are many universities out there that have taken different steps for how to organize their online writing center. There are university writing centers that will charge you per appointment. And I can tell you that if I were going to one of those schools, I would not use the online writing center very much, because I've seen some writing centers charge $100 per hour per appointment, and that's a lot of money for that. But here at ACU, you have access to the writing center for free as part of your tuition. So if you're a member of the ACU community, great. You can have up to 2 tutoring appointments per week. Through the Online Writing Center, we work with online students as well as staff and faculty, and you can schedule up to 2 appointments per week, up to 2 weeks in advance. A normal appointment is 1 hour in length. And so if you are making an appointment, it's helpful to think about how much work can reasonably be done in an hour. So while it does vary based on the stage of your writing and what you're looking for, a good rule of thumb is that a maximum amount of material that someone might review in an hour is about 15 pages. That's a good maximum. So if you have, say, a dissertation chapter that is 45 pages long, you probably want to make more than one appointment so that you can get feedback on the first chunk, then the second chunk, and then the third to more or less get through the whole document in a couple appointments. Now, if in doubt, you can always just send your draft and we'll get through as much as we can in the time. But again, plan accordingly. If you really want feedback on pages 20 to 30, you might put in your appointment notes, say, oh, could you please give me feedback on that section first? And if you have more time, could you look at this section that starts on page 5? And that helps us give you the feedback that you are most interested in. You can make an appointment and give us no notes at all except the assignment, in which case we'll look at it and we'll make a best guess. But again, you probably have a better idea than we do about what you're most interested in. And that includes telling us things like, oh, are you particularly interested in, is it clear that you are answering this part of the assignment instructions? In which case, tell us that in the notes, give us a link to the assignment, and so on and so forth. Let me tell you a little bit more about how we work. And if you look at this slide here, we say asynchronous appointments. Well, that's how it used to be. I'm happy to say that we also have real-time appointments available, and I'll show you that schedule in a little bit. To schedule an appointment with the Online Writing Center, the best way to do this is to go to the My ACU portal, and then if you look under academic resources, you can find Online Writing Center, and that will take you to our scheduling system. I'm going to bring that up and show it in my web browser. All right, now you should see our online scheduling system. So you might hear this referred to as WC Online. You don't really need to worry about those details. If you go to the portal, it will take you to this page. And you can see that we have these white spots, which are available appointments. And we have them at a variety of days and times. So you'll notice that Tuesday, for example, we have a number of evening times. We've got some midday on Thursday. And we're always looking to see how we can better serve students. So if, for example, what would really work best for you is a real-time appointment at 9 in the morning on this day, you can always ask and we'll see if we can get someone who can meet with you on that time. But we have a mix of real-time and asynchronous appointments because sometimes your availability doesn't align with the staff who are available for real time, but we can still get you feedback within 24 hours. So looking at this, you'll see that on Tuesday, January 9th, this is looking at the left-hand column with the text in blue, you'll see that my colleague Sarah has real-time option listed next to her name. And let's just draw our attention to that. Real-time option, and then down here, real-time option. So that tells you that you can make an appointment with her to ask questions back and forth. Perhaps there's something you want to try formatting and say, hey, is this what it's supposed to look like? Or can you tell me what I need to click on to do that? A real-time appointment is really helpful for that. If you have specific questions, oh, I'm trying to do X, you can always send us an email about that and we can respond. But if you want to have a back and forth, real-time appointments are great. Now, we often get the question, who should I make an appointment with? Well, that depends on what kind of feedback you're looking for. For many people, the thing that they're looking for first is the timeliness. And so they look for someone whose schedule availability aligns with what they're looking for. So for example, let's say I had a paper that I was going to be working on during my lunch break on Tuesday. And I say, okay, well, I'll be done before I leave work on Tuesday. I see Dr. Emily Amirati has an appointment at 7 p.m. So I'm going to schedule that appointment. It's an asynchronous appointment because we don't see real time next to her name. I'm going to schedule that appointment, and I'm going to make sure I upload my paper draft before 7 p.m. that day. Now, if I'm finishing before I leave work, that's no problem. I just do my work, and up to that point, I can upload a new draft, even if I went back and uploaded one already. But come 7 o'clock, Dr. Amirati will take a look and see, there's their paper. Look at it, look at any requests you've given, and send you feedback via email, generally within 24 hours. If it's a Holy Week or Christmas weekend, it might take a little bit longer, but in the normal academic year, we'll get back to you within 24 hours, or for an appointment on Monday, because we know that your appointment is due Monday at midnight, we'll get that back to you in the early afternoon on Monday. All these times are in Central US time, by the way. All right. So again, you can make up to 2 appointments per week, and each appointment will be roughly an hour in length. And you can schedule your appointments up to 2 weeks in advance. So if you're planning it out and you say, well, I am supposed to submit a draft by, Thursday at 9 p.m. Oh, maybe I should make an appointment for, say, Wednesday at 7 p.m. to get at least something in there to get some feedback so that I can get someone else's input before I turn in that draft for a grade. Now, looking through, if we were to look at the biographies of these different persons, you'll find that Dr. Dale Smith, Dr. Emmy Amirati, Dr. Ingrid Bradley all have their particular credentials that include having a doctorate and having written a doctoral dissertation. If you are working on a doctorate yourself and writing a dissertation, that might be a particular perspective and experience that you want. Or you might be writing a paper at the undergraduate or graduate level, and you're not looking for that particular type of input, in which case you might pick anyone on our schedule. Or you might be a English language learner, with English not being your primary or first language that you use. And you might say, well, I'd like to make an appointment with Sarah because she's got a special background in that. And I would like to ask her for feedback on idiomaticity and other things like that, because it's an area that you're trying to improve. All right, so we're going to head back to the slides now. So you should see my computer with PowerPoint coming up. And let's talk about our main objectives for now. So this is going to be, we are going to be looking at how to get into the graduate writing mindset and about the basics of APA style. One moment while I double check that our captions are here and working. Great. So we are going to be talking about getting into the graduate writing mindset first. For example, what does that mean? Well, we are going to be talking about that in some detail. So academic writing, it's important to always keep in mind what the context is. And by that, I mean what we are seeing, what we are doing, what we are working with, who our audience is. So let's go ahead and take a look at some writing. What does it mean to have strong academic writing? Well, in our particular context at ACU, at an American-style university, with academic American English being our chosen medium of communication, we're not saying it's the best, we're saying it's our chosen medium of communication. We have some things that we are looking for, like logical structure, where it makes sense why information is where it is. Explicit argumentation, by that mean that we are spelling out the different steps of the argument. We're not leaving it to the reader to guess. We're not leaving it to the reader to have to intuit what they think the author is trying to tell them. Instead, we are looking for writing that spells out how these ideas are connected. We're also looking for academic writing that gives us clear and convincing evidence that is appropriate to the scope of this particular argument that is being made. What do we mean by that? We mean that you give support where the support is needed, that you show where the information comes from, but that you also don't overly burden the reader with things. So for example, if you're going to write a chemistry paper and you say a water molecule is composed of 2 hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom, that is not something that is really in dispute, and it's not something that requires a dozen citations. One citation would be fine. Now, if you're saying multiple studies have shown whatever it is you're talking about, then because you're making the claim that multiple studies have done that, then you either want to be citing something that lists those multiple studies, or actually having multiple citations so that those citations and the references that go with them are showing, oh yes, here are multiple studies doing just that thing that I mentioned. Synthesis of evidence and ideas. What do we mean by that? Well, synthesis is when you create new meaning from combining or applying or interpreting information. So someone may have proposed a theory about how people behave, but when you apply it to a new context, you find out things like, does it work? Does it seem likely that this will be an effective tool for this particular thing? Is it something that needs to be modified? That's the kind of stuff where applying someone else's work to a new context, you will be creating new meaning. And sometimes that's meaning about, and this worked well, and sometimes it doesn't, or that the research, when we consider one study with another one, that some modification should be done. And that's part of your creating new meaning from this. We also want to have clear connections and transitions between ideas so that it's clear when you're wrapping up one discussion and shifting to another. Some of that is through things like how you arrange your ideas into paragraphs. Some of it can involve connecting words and phrases, but the goal is to avoid having what seems a random shift between different sets of information and having a clear usage, a clear utility of the information that you're giving at this particular point in your writing. Consider these 2 sets of phrases. When I was a child, I loved reading all the books I could find, period. Now I am pursuing a doctoral degree in education, period. So there are a couple ways that the mind could try and connect this. One is that, oh, loving the books led you to that. But it also could be that you loved reading books then, and now you're in a doctoral degree in education, and it's so much work, it's not fun, and you don't enjoy reading anymore. Those are both entirely a possible interpretations of this, depending on the context you're seeing it, and depending on what you as the reader read into, and you read between the lines. And that creates a subjective shift in meaning because there's an ambiguity in how these are connected. Now consider this modification. When I was a child, I loved reading all the books I could find. That love for reading grew into a love for teaching reading. Therefore, to further my teaching career, I decided to pursue a doctoral degree in education. So what the second set of text has versus the first is a clear connection where we see the cause and effect of one thing leading to the other, which is very different, I hope you'll agree, from someone getting burnt out and no longer enjoying reading because of their studies, which is hopefully not the case for any of you. So now let's look at a couple examples and think about what could be improved about these, specifically in the context of academic writing. Now, remember, in academic writing, we've said that strong academic writing, we want it to have a logical structure, explicit argumentation, clear and convincing evidence appropriate to the scope, synthesis of evidence and ideas, and strong connections and transitions. So think about that as we look at this first statement. At the dawn of time, the very first beings who call themselves humans, by which one means Homo sapiens, or thinking man, must have wondered what their purpose was on Earth. Well, if we look at that, it's a very broad statement. It's talking about the dawn of time, the very first humans, and it's kind of the sort of speculation that we can't prove anything because we don't have a time machine to go back and talk to those people. So we don't actually know what they're thinking. And also it's very wordy. The first beings who call themselves humans, by which one means Homo sapiens or thinking man, that is basically saying humans three different ways. And that would be considered redundant in APA style. Now, if you're giving a lecture talk and this is how you get everyone to quiet down to pay attention to the very important things, then of course you might have something like this to focus people. But on the written page, in APA style, this would be considered overly wordy or overly verbose, and you'd want to edit it to be more concise. In addition, you'd also want to go ahead and to take this and say, okay, let us go ahead and think about what's actually part of our argument, in which case you'd probably cut this entirely. All right, what about this next example here? XYZ, whatever that should be, XYZ is a significant problem in this country. Hayashibara, 1989. Well, whatever your claim is about, if you're saying that something is a significant problem now, you probably want a source that is more recent than, let's see, 35 years old. So there's a concept of recent research, which will vary depending on the field or subfield, but most people will agree that last 5 years is usually reasonably recent. And in this case, 30-something years is probably not a good commentary on how things are right now. Now, as it happens, if we were looking at Japan in the 1980s, people would say, oh, this economy is doing amazing. It's going to just keep growing and growing and growing. And now they're having a problem with the population shrinking, the economy not growing very fast at all. So, those 30-something years, huge difference. So even if this thing is still true, you would want to have a more current source for this. Now, regarding the next one, so-and-so is the worst politician ever. Well, worst is kind of hard to pin down. It'd be helpful to be more specific. And saying worst ever, not only is that rather subjective, but it'd also be hard to prove. If we had more specific parameters, like the worst politician in terms of number of bills that they co-authored that were passed over such and such a period of time, you might be able to make that case because that's making it a quantitative thing. We're comparing numbers here. But by itself, worst politician ever is very non-specific about what that means, what we mean by it. What about number 4? FOMO promotes AA, which affects ELLs in MS and HS. This is what we call an alphabet soup sentence. It's got so many abbreviations that it is hard to follow the ideas, and it's entirely possible that you will confuse one set of abbreviations for some identical abbreviations that mean something else. Now, in this particular case, MS and HS could be middle school and high school. But if you're reading this in a medical context, there are some ways you could interpret these abbreviations that involve MS being multiple sclerosis patients and HS being Huntington syndrome patients, because those are abbreviations that are sometimes used in that field. So if in doubt, spell it out. And there's a whole way that APA has for introducing abbreviations so that when you know it because they've told you, this is what I'm using for this term. All right, what about the last one? This problem will never end, ABC News 2014. Now, there are times where you will be using a news source in writing because that happens to be the place where the information that you're looking for is reported. There may also be times and places where you are looking and you see, oh, this is actually something that's being covered by scholarly literature that tells me things like where the information came from, that has peer review, and things like that. And so while there's certainly a time and place for news sources, in general, you will be wanting to look for something that has a more formal academic source for your writing. That could be a textbook, it could be a book, could be a journal article, could be a government website or a government report, many other things. But a news source, ask yourself, is that the best source for this information that I want to relay? Okay, so looking at this next example here, let's just make sure that everyone can see my captions here. When you are looking at this, when you're looking at your writing, ask yourself, is there a clear order? Now, there are several different ways that you can organize things and that people do according to the style and the medium. How you organize information in a text message that you're sending to your mother is probably a bit different from how you are organizing your scholarly argument in a course paper. But when you are writing for an assignment, I'd strongly recommend using a model like this for organizing your paragraphs. And this is what we call the no tiers plan, which is a scheme for paragraph organization that I developed at another university and is, I believe, being used at 5 different universities now. The no tiers plan for paragraph writing. NO, nothing omitted. So it's a checklist to see, do I have all of these things? NO, nothing omitted. T, topic sentence. E, evidence or argumentation. A, analysis. R, repeat as necessary. S, synthesize. And then when you're done with your argument, conclude or transition it. So let's run through that one by one. So start out the paragraph with a topic sentence that states what you're writing about in this paragraph. Is there some central claim that you are trying to convince the reader of? That would go here. A point that you're going to make and then expand upon, that will go here. And then you back up that claim that you've made in your topic sentence with following evidence that you don't want to just present a summary of. You want to discuss it with analysis and show how this connects to your topic and sometimes unpack it. So for example, you might have a sentence that says, this study found that, but it was conducted with a very atypical group of 15 siblings. Now, that's an uncommon family size in the United States, and so your findings for what is happening in that family are less likely to be what we call generalizable to the broader population, just because that sort of large family unit, lots of things work differently. So some evidence will require more unpacking than others, but if it's something that changes how you understand that evidence, you absolutely should have that analysis in there. So evidence and analysis repeated as necessary, followed by our fifth step, the synthesis, where you discuss what all these things mean when put together. If you have sources that are conflicting about what to do, what is the decision that's being made? Or what is the best path as you have determined from your study of these things? And then when you're done with your argument, we're either going to be concluding it, or we're going to continue or move it to the next stage in another paragraph. So we'd have a concluding or transitioning sentence to wrap things up and bring us to that next stage. Now, if we look at an example paragraph here, this is coming from a sample journal article. And this is showing an approach to stress reduction that has gained increasing recognition is mindfulness training to target attention and emotion processing. So we started the paragraph with a clear claim. It says, hey, this thing is getting more recognition. Used across a variety of settings, mindfulness-based stress reduction is a widely known form of mindfulness training that has been shown to reduce stress, depression, and anxiety. So it's unpacking that. It's saying, oh, there is that training we were referring to. Let's give it its formal name. That's mindfulness-based stress reduction. Show where that came from. That's the Kabat-Zinn 1990. Tell us something about it. It's widely known, and it's been shown to reduce stress, depression, and anxiety, of which we have those last two citations, Grossman et al. 2004 and Hoffman et al. 2010, to back up saying that this is something that has been shown and being shown by more than one author or more than one set of researchers. Now, it's always important to keep in mind when something was published. So if you were writing today, you'd probably want a more current source. But when this article was published, as you can see from the reference at the bottom, this is published in 2013. So having something in 2004 by itself, that would be almost a decade ago when they were publishing this. So anchoring that with the 2010 source, the Hoffman et al. Source, that is one helpful way for them to show that, oh, it wasn't just one period of time, there's an ongoing pattern of usage. Continuing on. So far we've got a topic sentence and evidence. These mental health concerns are frequently reported among educators. So we're getting some interpretation of those things that it's been shown to affect. So we've got some analysis and a little new evidence. Therefore, teachers may derive benefit from learning and practicing mindfulness techniques. So that therefore tells us that there's some synthesis here. It's saying, okay, considering that together, it looks like teachers will benefit from using this. But there's some additional things here. So it continues. However, given considerable workload demands, often juggled with family responsibilities, teachers may not seek out such training from a healthcare provider. So they're pointing out that there is a potential issue here that stops it from being used. And more synthesis. Therefore, making training readily accessible and specifically relevant to educators outside of a strictly mental health care framework are important considerations. So they're creating new meanings, say, okay, well, we're considering this stuff before. We know that this has been used to show that, but we also know that teachers are stressed and busy. And so if we make this more helpful to them, then it's more likely to be used. And then we have the bringing it towards their specific project. So this is our transition from the background to the heart of the paper, our goal was to conduct a preliminary evaluation of a modified mindfulness-based stress reduction training specifically adapted for elementary school teachers. Okay, so this is a paragraph that essentially follows the Noteer's plan. And it's very easy to follow because they're giving you timely evidence to support their claims. They are analyzing it, they are synthesizing it, and there's a clear transition to bring us from that background to their specific project at the very end. Okay, we are going to finish our time here with a discussion of APA style. We're going to look at some APA rules for how to format things, especially how to show where information came from. Now, why use APA style? Well, it turns out that this is one of the most widely used style systems. And one of the reasons it's so widely used is that when you have people coming from a wide variety of backgrounds, when you have people who are learning different languages in different places where not all allusions and implicit references will be shared and recognized by everyone, it turns out having this writing style that is designed to be unambiguous is really helpful. And so APA style is one of the most common things used in nursing studies, for example, even though the American Nursing Association has its own style system precisely because people in multiple disciplines use it. And so it's easy to share your work with those other people with their being able to understand what you're saying right away. Also, it is the institutional standard for ACU Online if you're in any of our programs except for the Graduate School of Theology. So it is what you are being graded on using, so we do recommend paying attention. Now, it also means that if you have some work that you're later trying to publish, that it's relatively easy to adapt it because there are so many journals that use it that you don't need to rewrite your paper. You just find an appropriate journal that takes things in APA style, and then they might ask for some additions and some tweaks for their audience, but most of your content is already formatted the way they want it to be. So what do we mean by APA formatting? Well, it turns out that there's a certain look and feel that people generally agree this looks professional. And so APA has its own particular set of rules for how to reach that point. And that includes things like being double spaced throughout, 1-inch margins on all sides for consistency, 12-point Times New Roman or similar font, having the page number in every upper right-hand corner of the page. And if you use our course paper template, that'll all happen automatically. You should also have some certain defined sections that are required to be in a paper written in APA style. A title page. For some of our advanced undergraduate and graduate courses, also an abstract, but the instructions will tell you when you need an abstract. But always should have a title page. Always should have a main body. This is where most of your paper goes. And should always have a reference section if you are citing a published source. So if you cite a published source, it should appear in your references section. If you have something in your reference section, it should be cited in the body of your paper. This will just show you some of the elements on the title page. And if you look on the left-hand side, we have an example of the basic formatting that you expect for the main body of the paper, where you can see there's a clear 1-inch margin on all sides, text is double spaced, and we have these headings that are bolded. And again, if you use our template, it's going to be very easy to do this. We don't recommend and trying to set this all up by hand, mainly because that's a lot of unnecessary work, but you could do it if you really wanted to. Now, APA style separates text using what are called headings. These are the bolded sets of text on this image that you are seeing here, and they tell the reader what content is following and how it relates to the previous heading. So if you have 2 level headings, they are subsections of whatever the previous level 1 heading was. Same thing if we have 2 level 3 headings within a level 2, these are subsections of whatever the level 2 heading was. Now, in terms of how we are identifying where the information came from, our basic process is going to be using in-text citations. And let me say what I mean by that. By in-text citations, I mean that we have somewhere in the sentence the information: who wrote it, when was it published, how do I find it? And the how do I find it will come up if you have a quotation. So we might say the timestamp on a video, oh, these many minutes and seconds to these many minutes and seconds. In a printed work like a journal article, the page that that quote came from, or a book, or a paragraph on a website. Basically, who wrote it, when was it published, and for something that we are quoting directly, how do I find that specific thing? Now, let's look at a practical example of this. So you can see on the screen, we have a highlighted passage from Mary Shelley's classic novel, Frankenstein. And so our question is, how would we format this if we're using a parenthetical citation? Well, like this, open quotes. I suddenly beheld the figure of a man at some speed. Sorry, I beheld the figure of a man at some distance advancing towards me with superhuman speed. Close quote. Shelley, 1818, page 65. Close parentheses, period. So this is telling the reader, this text came directly from Shelley's 1818 source, page 65 of that. It's their writing, not mine. Okay. Now there's another way that you can present that same information when you want to highlight who wrote it, and that's with what we call a signal phrase. So you'll have the name of the author, the publication year, perhaps a verb, and then the quotation in quotation marks, followed by the page number in parentheses, such as, according to Jones, 2019, quote, dogs are simply the best pet, close quotes, parentheses, page 12, close parentheses, period. And that tells us that, oh, we were saying, I'm not saying dogs are the best pet, Jones is, which would be very helpful to point out if you were, say, writing a paper about cats being better pets than dogs. Now, you can wrap this in different ways depending on how you're trying to use this information. As you can see in this next example, even though I prefer cats, comma, some argue that, open quotes, dogs are simply the best pet, close quotes, parentheses, Jones, comma, 2019, comma, page 12, close parentheses, period. So let's look back at another piece of text from Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. So how would that look like if we are going to be quoting it, but introducing it with a signal phrase and marking where it came from with a parenthetical citation? Well, here we have it. Shelley, parentheses, 1818, close parentheses, wrote, comma, quote, life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, comma, is dear to me, comma, and I will defend it, close quotes, parentheses, P period, 72, close parentheses, period. So that's telling us, oh, this thought came from Shelley. What did they write? Here's the quote. There's a page number to find it. Now, usually around this time, we have a question coming about quotation versus paraphrasing, because one of the general conventions of advanced academic writing is to minimize the use of quotations, because other authors are usually writing for a different context from what you are. And by that, we are saying that paraphrase is when you introduce someone else's ideas in your own words. A quotation is when you are presenting the other person's words because it's part of your argument. And in general, most graduate instructors will suggest that you minimize use of quotations, to use it only when it really says something much more clearly. Like if you're discussing an author's specific definition of something, of course, showing their actual definition would be really helpful. But in most cases, their context is different from yours, so you should be writing it in your own words to convey the information most appropriate to your context. Now, in APA style, when you paraphrase, you're not required to have a quotation and marks around it, but you do need a citation to indicate the information in the sentence came from that other source. And that's something that in APA style you do for every sentence that is presenting information from another source. And by the way, we do have a full separate webinar on paraphrasing, but when you paraphrase, make sure to change both the words and word order of the original source to avoid plagiarizing. And I've included here a link to a wonderful guide to paraphrasing put together by some of my old coworkers. Now, in terms of writing, here's an example of an in-text paraphrase with the citation. In Frankenstein, Shelley, 1818, wrote that life is worth preserving even though it is full of pain. And if we were to go and look back at the earlier text, we can see, oh, it conveys the sentiment, but we've kind of pared it down to that essential thought. And so it takes fewer words and it makes it more of a universal statement rather than I, the narrator, am feeling this. Now, if you have something that's you cite in your paper in APA style, whether it's a quotation or a paraphrase, it should be showing up in your references page. This is a full list of every published source that's cited in the paper. And in this day and age, we consider videos, even videos online, to be a form of published source. So this references page will be alphabetized by the author's last name, or the first author's last name if there are multiple authors. And if there's no author name for the source, by the title. But in most cases, if it's, say, something you pull from the McDonald's website, you would attribute the corporate entity that produces, like the McDonald's Corporation, as the corporate author and put their info in the author field if there's not a specific name otherwise attached. Now, when you're having your references page, there are a couple rules about that, but it's going to look more clear if I just show you what that looks like. We can see each line after the first one for an entry is bumped in ½ an inch. And you can see that the names of journals are italicized. The name of books are italicized. Note that the journal names are not just italicized, but they're italicized and written in title case, where every word of 4 or more letters has the first letter capitalized, among other things, and that the book titles are in sentence case, meaning capitalized the same way you capitalize a sentence. And that is something where if you look at this regularly, because you are glancing at references once per week, very soon you develop a sense of, oh, yeah, that looks right for a book citation. Do note that in APA 7th edition, you no longer include the city, state, or country information in the references. It's just going to be for a book, the names of the authors with their initials, the publication year, title of the book, publisher name, and that's it for what's called a single or multi-author book. If it's what we call an edited book volume with chapters written by different authors, that's the second to last entry. You can see that we also include the editor name or names. And that if it's a source that you access electronically, like you read the journal article online, you should include a link. If what's called a digital object identifier or DOI link is available, use that. But you want to have a link to show the exact version that you access, because sometimes the online version has more resources that aren't in the print one, and other times it has fewer because, say, they didn't pay to license the images for online distribution. Here are a couple examples for how a book reference is formatted. And you'll see that we're answering a set of questions. Who wrote it? When was it published? What's it called? And where can I find it? This example for a journal article is also following that basic formula. There's a few more pieces of information on the where do I find it, but it's essentially who wrote it, when was it published, what's it called, and how do I find it? All right, we're going to have to bring our time to a close, but before we wrap up, I want to show you some other resources that might be of interest. Now, if we go to the ACU Online Writing Center website, we have an APA page here that we have links to download our course paper templates, various assignment or major writing project templates. Also, if you went to resources, you can see we have things like sample papers, some information on other style systems that you might come across or be using in publishing. Under services, if you go to writing webinars, we have an archive of all of our past webinar recordings, and you can see both the schedule view, the sorted by program. So say you were taking healthcare administration courses, you could go to the HCAD tab to see all of those sorted by course number and then the week that the assignment tie-in is in. And there's a big alphabetical list at the end that you can also search. I do recommend for students who are reaching the dissertation, doctoral project, or capstone project stage that they purchase the publication manual of the American Psychological Association. It does have a lot of very specific rules and examples that you'll probably use a lot when you're at that stage. But the most common ones that you'll encounter and be using when writing papers can be found through the third resource linked here, the APA style website. This is something that launched with APA 7th edition, and it does have many helpful examples for the most common cases. But if you're writing a doctoral dissertation, you'll probably want to know the other rules that aren't covered on the free website. There's also a webinar by the ACU Online Library about using Zotero, which is a citation management software that can save you a lot of work, especially when you're working on a project for months or years at a time. That's all the time we have for today. So let me finish by saying you can always send us a question at onlinewritingcenter@acu.edu. You can go to my.acu.edu and under academic resources, select the Online Writing Center to schedule a tutoring session. And we have additional resources on our website online, blogs.acu.edu/online writing center. I'll repeat that. Blogs, blogs.acu.edu/online writing center. Thank you.